"Drop your weapon, officer." The shout rang through the courtroom like a thunderclap. All eyes were locked on Officer Daniel Briggs, standing tall, red-faced, veins bulging, his service pistol raised. But not at a criminal, not at a threat. He was aiming it at the black judge sitting on the bench. Judge Vanessa Cole's face was calm, her gavel frozen mid-air, yet her eyes locked onto Briggs with the steel of someone who had seen too much and feared nothing. The silence in the room was heavy. No one moved. "Put the gun down," the bailiff said again, now slowly drawing his own. But Briggs didn't move. His hands shook. His lips curled. "You people think you can." "Officer." Gasps filled the courtroom. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. A juror stood halfway, frozen in fear. The courtroom, a place where justice was meant to rule, had become the stage of an unthinkable scene. And then, black leather shoes hit the ground fast. A hand reached out. Something shifted behind the judge's bench. And in a heartbeat, everything changed. But before we get to what happened next, you need to understand how we got here. It started 5 months earlier. In a small city just outside Atlanta, where the sun blazed hot and the sidewalks told silent stories of people ignored. Officer Daniel Briggs had served in the police force for nearly 20 years. To the outside world, he was known as a tough but fair kind of cop. Always first on the scene, never afraid to raise his voice. But to the ones who lived under the weight of his badge, Briggs was something else. He was the cop who never smiled when he pulled you over, who never believed your story, who always reached for his belt before asking your name, especially if you were black. That's what happened to 17-year-old Jamal Green. It was just another Friday afternoon when Jamal left school. Backpack slung low, headphones in, mind on nothing more than catching the bus. He'd barely made it 2 blocks when the police cruiser pulled up beside him. "Briggs, hands where I can see them," Briggs shouted, jumping out of the vehicle before the car even fully stopped. Jamal froze. "What did I?" "Don't talk. Turn around." In seconds, Jamal was slammed against the hood. Backpack ripped open. Pockets emptied. A neighbor filmed it. The video showed Jamal shaking. No weapon. No threat. Just a kid walking home. Briggs found nothing, of course. "You fit the description," he mumbled. "Next time, don't walk like you've got something to hide." The video went viral that night. Jamal's mom, Tiana Green, had enough. She didn't want an apology. She wanted justice. So she filed a civil rights lawsuit. And she wasn't alone. Turns out, Jamal wasn't Briggs' first. 5 others came forward. Young men. All black. All with similar stories. No arrests. No charges. Just humiliation, fear, and a cop who walked away every time like it never mattered. The city erupted. News cameras came. Activists marched. The police department was forced to act. And for the first time in his career, Briggs was off the street and in court. Judge Vanessa Cole was assigned to the case. She was known for being sharp, no-nonsense, and deeply principled. She'd grown up in Mississippi, where her father couldn't vote, and her mother taught her how to hold her head high even when the world tried to push it down. Briggs didn't like her. Didn't like that she didn't smile at him. Didn't like that she didn't look away when he stared. Didn't like that a black woman had the power to judge him. But he was on trial now. Each day, the courtroom filled. Cameras outside. Reporters scribbling. Jamal sat quietly beside his mother, eyes darting, unsure what justice even looked like anymore. Briggs had lawyers. Expensive ones. They called character witnesses, old friends, and a few officers who painted him as a man just doing his job. But every day, more cracks showed. Vanessa asked the hard questions. She allowed the victims to speak fully. And when they did, something strange began to happen. People listened. Even in a country where stories like these were too common, this trial was different. One of the biggest turning points came when Briggs' own body cam footage was leaked. Footage that was never submitted by his defense. It showed a night call. 2 black teenagers walking down an alley. No crime. No call. Just Briggs rolling up and saying, "Let's have a talk, boys." The video showed them clearly scared. One asked, "Did we do something wrong, sir?" Briggs replied, "You did by being here." Gasps filled the courtroom when that played. Vanessa watched without blinking. The court adjourned for the day. Briggs didn't go home that night. He was held for tampering with evidence. And still, the trial went on. As more victims shared, the story widened. Teachers came forward. Parents. One officer who used to work with Briggs admitted he'd seen him target kids, but didn't say anything out of fear. Fear of what? Judge Cole had asked. Fear of becoming a target myself. Then came the surprise testimony. A janitor. An older white man named Hank who'd worked in the courthouse for over 30 years. He said he'd overheard Briggs talking one day during a recess. Something about the judge. Something ugly. The room leaned in. "What exactly did you hear?" the attorney asked. Hank swallowed. He said, "That black witch thinks she can take me down. She better hope I don't lose this case." A shiver ran through the courtroom. Briggs sat stone still, but his knuckles were white. The trial continued for another week. Then came closing arguments. And on the morning of the verdict, the courtroom was packed. Judge Cole walked in, as calm and poised as ever. The jury had reached a decision. But before she could read it, Briggs stood up. Not slowly, not nervously, but with purpose. He reached into his coat. People screamed. A gun glinted in the courtroom light. And just like that, Briggs pointed it at her. And the courtroom shattered into chaos. Then, a loud crash came from the side door. A sudden movement from behind the judge's bench. Something, or someone, wasn't supposed to be there. Everything happened in the space of 3 heartbeats. And what happened next stunned the court. A figure burst from behind the judge's bench, security gear half on, half off, slamming into Officer Briggs with the force of a battering ram. The gun fired. Once. The blast cracked through the courtroom like lightning. People ducked. Some screamed. Papers flew. And then, silence. Briggs was on the floor, the gun skidding across the marble with a metallic clang. The courtroom deputy, Officer Melanie Price, knelt on top of him, pinning his arm behind his back. Her eyes were wide, chest heaving. She hadn't hesitated. She'd been stationed behind the bench as backup after threats were made earlier in the week. Threats no one took seriously enough. Until now. The judge? Still standing. A small tear on her robe. The bullet had missed. By inches. But she didn't flinch. She didn't stumble. She only stared down at Briggs as he squirmed on the ground, red-faced and snarling. "Get him out of my courtroom," she said, voice like granite. And they did. 2 bailiffs took him by the arms, dragging him out as he barked curses and threats at everyone, most of all Judge Cole. The room was stunned. The audience frozen, mouths open, eyes darting. No one could believe what just happened. Not in a courtroom. Not during a trial. Not by a cop. The judge looked around the room, then turned toward the jury. "If you need a moment before we proceed," she said softly, "you'll have it. Otherwise, I intend to finish this." No one spoke. The courtroom emptied for a break. Paramedics checked the judge. She refused to go to the hospital. She refused to postpone. And when court resumed an hour later, the jury re-entered the room. Eyes were red, faces pale, but they were ready. The verdict was red. Guilty. On every count. Unlawful use of force. Tampering with evidence. Civil rights violations. And one more just added. Attempted murder. Briggs, now cuffed and shackled, sat in a side room with a one-way mirror. He wasn't going anywhere this time. Justice had spoken. But outside the courtroom, the world was boiling. News of the courtroom gun incident exploded across every major outlet. White cop points gun at black judge. Trial chaos in Georgia courtroom. Justice nearly killed. The system on trial. Everyone had an opinion. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just about Briggs anymore. It was about the system that let him get this far. That night, Judge Cole didn't go home. She was moved to a secure location, along with her daughter, Layla. She tried not to let her hands shake as she poured tea in the hotel room kitchenette, but they did. She sat beside Layla, held her close, and whispered, "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay." But Layla had seen it. She'd watched the live stream from her high school classroom when the event happened. She saw the man point the gun. She saw her mom stand tall. She saw the shot. And she hadn't breathed again until her mom appeared on screen after the break. Now she was quiet. Afraid to ask. Afraid to speak. Until she said, "Why did he hate you so much?" Vanessa sipped the tea, swallowed the lump in her throat, and answered the way only a mother could. "Because I didn't let him win." Back in the city, protests broke out, but not the kind born from rage. These were made of unity. Signs reading, "Justice for Jamal," "We stand with Judge Cole," and "Protect Black women," were everywhere. Jamal stood on the steps of the courthouse the next day, surrounded by microphones. But he didn't talk long. Just said, "I didn't think anyone would ever believe me." But she did. Then walked away. But not everyone was celebrating. Something was coming. Something hidden. Someone in that courthouse had helped Briggs bring the gun inside. There were rumors. A badge was missing. A hallway camera mysteriously glitched. A name erased on a log sheet. But nobody knew for sure who did it. Not yet. And someone was working hard to keep it that way. 3 days later, the courthouse received a letter. No return address. No fingerprints. No markings. Inside was a printed photo. It showed a meeting in a parking garage. One of the people was Briggs. The other? A high-ranking figure no one would have guessed. The letter had no words. No signature. Just that single image. Judge Cole received a copy at her private hotel room that same night. She opened it slowly, eyes scanning every detail. Her jaw tightened. She didn't say a word. Instead, she made a phone call. Marshall Jennings? It's Vanessa Cole. I need a meeting. Urgent. No staff. No aides. Just you. Now, what she saw in that photo changed everything. And the moment she stepped outside to leave, a black SUV screeched around the corner. Brakes screaming. Doors flying open. Men in ski masks jumped out, moving fast. Too fast. Vanessa reached for her daughter. But it was too late. One of them grabbed Layla. And just like that, she was gone. Vanessa's scream tore through the night. And the fight for justice just became a fight for her daughter's life. The SUV was gone in seconds. Its tires burned black scars into the pavement as it disappeared into the shadows of the Atlanta night. Vanessa ran into the street, barefoot, robe flapping in the wind. She screamed Layla's name until her throat went raw. But Layla was gone. And the judge who had just stood tall against a gun in court dropped to her knees in the middle of the road, shaking, helpless for the first time in a very long time. The marshals swarmed in too late. They took her, Vanessa gasped. They took my baby. Marshall Jennings, a seasoned veteran with a permanent grimace and graying temples, immediately got to work. Lock this place down. I want every camera feed from the past 20 minutes. And get Atlanta PD in here now. But Vanessa wasn't listening. She was staring at the spot where the SUV had vanished. And then she remembered. The photo. The parking garage. Briggs wasn't acting alone. Back inside the safe room, her fingers fumbled through her belongings. She pulled out the envelope and stared again at the grainy image. Briggs in uniform. And next to him, Deputy Police Chief Ryan Maddox. A man who had publicly condemned Briggs. Who had sat beside the mayor during the trial and said, "This department does not tolerate racism." He was in the photo, face clear, hand on Briggs' shoulder. He lied. He wasn't on it. And maybe he had her daughter. Vanessa clutched the photo in her hand, shaking with rage. She turned to Jennings. "We don't have time. Maddox is dirty." Jennings blinked. "You sure?" She slapped the photo into his palm. "Positive." Within minutes, an emergency warrant was issued. But Maddox had already gone off-grid. His phone, turned off. His house, empty. His car, found abandoned in a shopping center parking lot across town. But there was one clue. A sticky note left on his fridge. It read, "She should have stayed quiet." That was enough. Vanessa wasn't just a judge now. She was a mother on a mission. And nothing in this world was more dangerous than a mother with nothing left to lose. Meanwhile, Layla Cole sat in the back seat of a van, hands tied behind her back, head covered with a cloth bag. Her heart thudded so hard she thought it might stop. She wanted to scream, but the gag in her mouth stopped her. The ride felt like it went on forever. Bumps, turns, doors slamming in the distance. Faint voices, mostly men. She tried to stay calm, tried to remember what her mom had always told her. Fear is natural, but courage is louder. Finally, the van stopped. She was dragged out, her sneakers scraping across rough ground. The bag came off. Layla squinted in the dim light. She was in some kind of warehouse. Dusty, cold, smelled like rust and oil. 2 men stood in the corner whispering. One looked familiar. The other wore sunglasses indoors and clutched a walkie-talkie. "Keep her here. No phones. No cameras. We're ghosts now," the man in sunglasses said. Layla stayed quiet, but her eyes scanned everything. The loose panel on the wall. The half-cracked light above. The pipe near her feet. She wasn't just going to sit here. Someone was going to pay for this. Back in the city, Vanessa was done playing defense. Jennings handed her a file with everything the FBI had on Maddox. Turns out, Maddox had a past. A sealed case file from 10 years ago. It had the words, White Cross Brotherhood, blacked out in 3 different reports. A known underground network of rogue law enforcement officers with ties to racial hate groups. And Briggs? He wasn't just a member. He was a recruiter, which meant Layla was a pawn in a much bigger game. Vanessa stared at the photo again, then looked up. I need to meet with someone, she said. Who? Jennings asked. She took a deep breath. Someone I should have never cut out of my life. The next day, she drove to a small, run-down church in East Point. The windows were boarded, but inside, the pews were clean and polished. A single man stood at the altar, wiping dust from a cross. He turned when she walked in. His face lit up. Vanessa. Hello, David. David Cole, her ex-husband, Layla's father, a former cop himself, until Briggs got him fired 7 years ago on a false charge. Vanessa hadn't spoken to him in 4 years. Not after the divorce. Not after the silence. But now, she needed him. And the moment he learned Layla was missing, all the pain between them vanished. Tell me everything, David said, eyes burning. She did. He listened, nodded, then said 5 words that sent a chill through her bones. I know where they are. Back at the warehouse. Layla had a plan. She'd managed to loosen the cords around her wrists. Her captors hadn't checked her shoes. Rookie mistake. She had a tracker in one. Her mom bought them after the Briggs threat started. If someone activated it, the signal would ping from a secure app her mom had installed. She pressed her heel into the side of the shoe until it clicked. The red light blinked once, twice, and then went dark. Signal sent. Now she just had to survive. In the Marshal's command center, a red dot appeared on the monitor. Ma'am, the text said to Vanessa, we've got a signal. Layla's shoe just pinged. About 30 miles south of the city, near an old steel mill. David looked at the screen. I know that place. That's where Briggs used to take his training sessions. It's off-grid, out of range. Perfect for someone trying to disappear. Vanessa stood. I'm going. With you. Jennings stepped in. We can't let you. She cut him off. She's my daughter. And I'm not waiting for paperwork. The Marshals had no choice but to follow. They suited up. Loaded vans. Body armor. Radios. And weapons. As the convoy sped south, Vanessa stared out the window. Each mile closer felt like a heartbeat louder. Until finally, the convoy screeched to a stop outside the rusted gates of the steel mill. Silence. Then, a single shot rang out from inside the building. Everyone ducked. David drew his weapon. They know we're here. Jennings pointed toward the side entrance. We go in. Now. Vanessa started running. Her feet pounded the gravel. And as she reached the edge of the warehouse, a voice called out. From the shadows. Vanessa Cole. You just don't know when to quit, do you? She turned. Standing there, holding a gun, was Deputy Chief Maddox. And he was not alone. Vanessa froze. The air was thick with tension, the kind that didn't breathe. It crackled. Her heart thundered in her chest, but her hands stayed steady. Behind Maddox, 3 men stood in a triangle, all armed, all masked. But Vanessa wasn't focused on them. She was focused on him. Deputy Chief Ryan Maddox, her former ally, the polished liar who'd stood beside grieving families, promising reform, while protecting racists like Briggs in secret. Now the mask was off. Literally. He smiled, a slick, arrogant twist of the mouth. I gave you every chance to walk away, he said. But no, you had to go full hero. Judge Vanessa Cole, the warrior of truth. He spat the last word like poison. You kidnapped my daughter, she said, stepping forward. She's safe, for now, Maddox said. Depends on what happens next. Jennings and the Marshals fanned out behind her, weapons up, but Maddox held up a hand. He said. You fire? She dies. You think I didn't plan for this? He pointed to a walkie clipped to his vest. 1 word from me, and the guy watching your little girl pulls the trigger. I don't bluff. David appeared at Vanessa's side, eyes locked on Maddox. What do you want? David growled. Maddox smiled wider. Simple. I walk out of here. No arrest. No charges. You say it was a misunderstanding. Blame it on a rogue officer. Say Briggs planned the whole thing solo. You play along, and your daughter goes free. Vanessa's jaw tightened. You don't get to rewrite the story, she said coldly. You've already lost. We have the photo, the files, the tracker from Layla's shoe. You're done. Am I? Maddox said. This system loves men like me, Judge. You think your trial mattered? All it did was light a fire. People like Briggs are pawns. I'm the one with the torch. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed inside the warehouse. Everyone turned. And then, gunfire. 2 shots. Then another. Go, go, go. Jennings yelled, signaling his team. Vanessa ducked and ran along the side of the warehouse, David at her back. The marshals stormed inside through the side door. Maddox vanished into the smoke. Inside the warehouse, it was chaos. Gunfire ricocheted off steel beams. Shadows darted behind old equipment. Sparks flew. Vanessa's focus narrowed to one thing. Layla. She climbed a steel staircase to a rusted catwalk, heart pounding, eyes scanning every corner. And there, through a half-broken glass window, she saw her. Layla, tied to a chair in a small control room. A single man stood guard, pacing nervously, holding a pistol. Vanessa didn't hesitate. She charged through the door like a bullet, slamming it into the guard. He staggered back, shocked. David followed with a punch that sent him flying into a wall. Layla screamed behind the gag. "Baby, it's me," Vanessa shouted, running to her daughter. Layla's eyes widened. She nodded furiously. Vanessa tore off the gag, untied the ropes. "Mom," Layla sobbed, throwing her arms around her. I got you, baby. You're safe now." But she wasn't, not yet. Because through the shattered window, they saw Maddox, running toward a back exit, with something in his hand. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. It was a detonator. Outside, the marshals were clearing the building, cuffing Maddox's masked men one by one. Sirens wailed in the distance. SWAT was arriving. But Maddox wasn't finished. He burst through a back door and ran across a gravel lot toward an old utility shed. Vanessa and David chased after him, Layla now safe in the hands of a marshal. "Maddox!" Vanessa shouted. He turned, thumb hovering over the detonator. "You don't understand, Judge," he said. "I'm not the problem. You are. You and your idea that this country can ever belong to all of us. That the badge can protect everyone. You're naive." Vanessa kept walking. "I'm not naive. I'm just not afraid of you." "Oh, you should be," he sneered. Then he clicked the button. Nothing. No boom. No rumble. Just silence. Maddox stared at the device, then smacked it with his palm. Click. Click. Still nothing. David raised his gun. "I disabled that 10 minutes ago," he said. "You really should have checked your pockets." Maddox spun to run. Crack. A marshal tackled him mid-sprint. The detonator flew into the air, landing harmlessly in the gravel. Maddox screamed as he was pinned to the ground. Vanessa stood over him. "You're done." But he just laughed. Low, ugly, bitter. "You think you stopped something?" he snarled. "There are others. And they're worse than me." She leaned down, eyes hard. "Let them come. I'll be waiting." That night, back in the city, the headlines exploded. Judge Vanessa Cole rescues daughter in hostage showdown. White supremacist ring exposed inside police department. Deputy Chief Maddox arrested in shocking kidnapping plot. The president called. Civil rights leaders gathered. And for once, the nation paused, not just to gawk, but to listen. Layla stood beside her mom as she gave a press statement. And for the first time, in a very long time, Vanessa smiled. But it wasn't over yet. Because 3 days later, an envelope arrived at her office. No return address. No markings. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 5 names. All judges. All black. All circled in red ink. And one of them was hers. Vanessa stared at the list. Her name, Vanessa Cole, circled twice. The paper trembled slightly in her hand, but not because she was afraid. She was furious. It was a warning. No, it was a declaration. The attack on her daughter, and on the justice system wasn't over. The people behind Briggs and Maddox weren't done. They were just getting started. "Ma'am," said one of the marshals, stepping closer. "Whoever sent this, they know where you are." Vanessa's voice was low. "I want this traced. Top priority." Quietly. "No leaks." He nodded and left. David stood behind her, arms folded, reading over her shoulder. "We can't wait for them to come again. We have to go after them." "I know," she said. "And we will." She folded the paper carefully and placed it in a secure evidence bag. But there was no time to breathe. Meanwhile, across town, a young woman named Denise Harlan was unlocking the back door of her coffee shop when she saw something strange. An envelope, left under the mat. She picked it up, confused. Inside was a photo. Her older brother, Isaiah, walking to his car. And a note underneath. "Tell the judge to back off, or he won't come home." Denise dropped the letter, her heart in her throat. Isaiah worked for the state attorney's office. He was part of the team helping reopen civil rights complaints after the Briggs trial. They were threatening anyone connected to Vanessa's mission now. She ran inside and grabbed her phone. Isaiah, she whispered when he picked up. They're watching you. Get out. Now. Back in the federal building, Vanessa met in a locked room with Marshal Jennings, David, and an FBI agent named Cruz, new to the case, sharp-eyed, and dead serious. There's a pattern here, Cruz said, laying out a map. Every name on that list of judges has either ruled against corrupt officers or supported civil rights reform. Some received death threats years ago. All were dismissed. Until now, David said. Cruz nodded. We believe these threats are being organized by an underground group calling themselves the Balance. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. Balance. They believe America's laws have tipped too far in favor of minorities, Cruz explained. They see themselves as restoring order. Maddox was just a piece of it. Jennings chimed in. We've started calling it what it really is, a domestic terror network. Vanessa clenched her fists. They've infiltrated the very system meant to stop them. David looked at her. So what now? Vanessa stood slowly. Now, we take the fight to them. 3 days later, Vanessa hosted a secret meeting with the judges on the list. All of them, 5 powerful black legal minds, gathered in an unmarked room inside a secured building, escorted under heavy guard. There was Judge Roberta Hayes from D.C., famous for her ruling against racial profiling. Judge Lionel Ward from Chicago, who dismantled an illegal surveillance program targeting black neighborhoods. Judge Aaron Steele, who uncovered decades of abuse in a Louisiana prison. And Judge Nia Harmon, who once had her home shot at for sentencing a white officer to life in prison. They all looked at Vanessa with the same eyes, tired but unbroken. We've all been hunted, Judge Harmon said. But this is war. We've played defense long enough, Vanessa said. It's time to go on the offensive. That night, the group formed a quiet alliance. They called it the Fifth Bench. And together, they began digging. Into police records. Into sealed indictments. Into missing files connected to Maddox, Briggs, and every known associate. What they found shocked them. Over 30 officers, agents, and officials across the country with ties to the Balance. And many were still serving. While the judges fought in silence, Layla struggled to return to normal life. Her school tried to make her feel safe. Her teachers treated her differently now. Careful, too gentle. Students whispered in the halls. She didn't feel like herself. Until one day, during lunch, she stood up in the cafeteria and said, Y'all don't need to look at me like I'm broken. I got kidnapped. I got free. Now I'm back. That's all you need to know. And just like that, Layla reclaimed her space. She wasn't a victim. She was her mother's daughter. But peace didn't last. That same week, a courier arrived at the courthouse with an urgent delivery for Judge Cole. It was a box. No return address. Bomb squad was called. After scanning it for explosives, they opened it. Inside was a tape recorder. Vanessa pressed play. A voice crackled through, distorted, mechanical, and human. You were warned, Judge Cole. For every name you expose, another candle goes out. Then the sound of screaming. And fire. A building collapsing. Then silence. Jennings checked the timestamp. The audio had been recorded just an hour earlier. Vanessa stared at the recorder. Find out where this happened. Now, they traced the sound to an office building in Birmingham, Alabama, where Judge Ward's nephew worked. The building was engulfed in flames. No casualties, but the message was clear. This was personal. That night, Vanessa couldn't sleep. She sat in her kitchen, sipping cold coffee, staring at the board on the wall. Photos. Names. Red strings. A growing map of evil. She whispered to herself, They want a war. David walked in, wrapping a blanket around her. They don't know who they started it with. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. You think you've seen the worst? You haven't even opened the last door yet. Attached, a photo. It was the outside of Layla's school. Taken that morning. The timestamp, 8:14 a.m. Vanessa dropped her phone and ran to Layla's room. Empty. She wasn't there. Panicked, she called the school. Layla didn't show up for first period, the receptionist said. Vanessa's heart pounded. She called Jennings. Called Cruz. Called David. They pulled surveillance. Layla had walked toward the school, but never went in. And across the street, a man had stood watching her. Not Briggs. Not Maddox. Someone new. Tall. Black leather jacket. No face visible. Vanessa whispered, Who are you? Then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Chapter 2 begins now. And suddenly, boom, a car exploded down the block from Vanessa's home. She hit the floor, screaming, glass raining from the windows. And as sirens screamed through the night, and the sky lit up red and white, the war officially began. The blast was deafening. Vanessa lay on the floor, her ears ringing, vision blurry, blood trickling from a cut above her eye. All she could think was Layla. She crawled toward the front door, the heat of the explosion still baking the air. Outside, flames danced sky-high from a black SUV, her neighbor's car. Thank God. But the message was clear. That bomb wasn't meant to kill. It was meant to say, "We're here. We're close. And we can reach you anytime." Sirens wailed as fire trucks and squad cars filled the street. Marshals rushed to pull Vanessa out of the house as neighbors gathered, eyes wide, covering their mouths in shock. Vanessa tried to stand. "Layla," she said, stumbling. "We're already on it," Jennings shouted, holding her upright. "We've issued an Amber Alert. We've locked down the entire school district. She's going to be found." But Vanessa knew better. This wasn't random. This was coordinated. These people weren't just trying to scare her anymore. They were trying to break her. And the one way they knew they could was through her daughter. 2 hours earlier, Layla had walked her usual path toward school, earphones in, hoodie up, trying to pretend things were normal again. She wasn't scared anymore. She was angry, tired of being pitted. She didn't notice the dark car following from a block away. Didn't notice the man leaning against the streetlight ahead, until he stepped into her path. She stopped. Her gut told her to run. But before she could even flinch, 2 more men flanked her, and a van screeched to a stop behind. A cloth, a sting in her arm. Then darkness. When Layla woke, she was somewhere cold. Damp. No windows. Her wrists were cuffed, but not tightly. Her backpack was gone. Her phone, too. A single light bulb flickered above. And in the shadows sat a man in the same black leather jacket Vanessa had seen in the surveillance photo. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "You're tougher than you look," he said, voice smooth, calm, like a teacher on a field trip. "That's good. Makes this more interesting." Layla glared. "Who are you?" He smiled. "I'm the one your mama's been looking for." He stood and paced slowly. Judge Vanessa Cole. Proud, powerful, unshakable. But we all have a pressure point. And you, little girl, you're hers. Layla spit at his shoes. He chuckled. "You're definitely her daughter." Back at the command center, Jennings slammed his hand down on the table. How the hell did they get that close? How? FBI agent Cruz laid out the most recent intel. There's chatter on encrypted forums. "We've been monitoring a group that refers to their leader only as Paladin. Rumor says he's ex-military. Brilliant tactician. He's been recruiting rogue law enforcement, security contractors, even ex-judges." Vanessa's hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the profiles. "I saw him," she said. "In the footage outside Layla's school." Cruz nodded. "That's likely our guy. No real name yet. No face ID match. But we found something." She pulled up a photo on the screen, grainy, nighttime, taken 2 years ago in Arizona. Same jacket. Same build. Standing with Briggs and Maddox. "He's been watching us longer than we thought," Cruz said. Vanessa swallowed. "Where is he now?" "We think he's moving Layla every few hours. They're not just hiding. They're running a campaign. Each move, each threat, it's all part of a greater message." Jennings cursed under his breath. David stood silent in the corner, jaw clenched, fists balled. Suddenly Vanessa said, "Pull up all known buildings previously owned or used by the White Cross Brotherhood. Warehouses, military surplus shops, abandoned precincts, anything off the books." Jennings looked at her. "Why?" "Because Paladin isn't running anymore," Vanessa said. "He's luring us." Meanwhile, Layla tested the cuffs. Loose. The Paladin guy had underestimated her. She'd kept calm the first time she was kidnapped. She knew panic didn't help. This time, she was planning. Her eyes scanned the room. One exit. A table with tools. A security camera in the corner. No sound system. No way they'd hear her from outside. But in the corner? An old electrical panel. She grinned. Target acquired. When the Paladin returned hours later with a plate of cold food, she played it cool. Stayed quiet. Just nodded, took the plate, and sat back down. He watched her for a moment. "You know, your mother's the reason all this is happening. We were fine, quiet, growing slowly. Then she had to go and turn it all into a circus." Layla didn't respond. He stepped closer. And when the world sees that even a judge's daughter can vanish without a trace, they'll think twice about trusting that system she loves so much. Layla locked eyes with him. You know what's funny? She said calmly. He blinked. What? She's going to come for you anyway. And when she does, she's not going to miss. Later that night, Vanessa received a text from an anonymous number. She's still alive. For now. But if you want to see her again, you'll deliver a message. On TV. Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Attached was a video. Layla. In the same room. Arms crossed, head high. The man behind the camera said, "Tell the world Vanessa Cole lied. Tell them Briggs was framed. Tell them justice is dead." Vanessa's hands shook. Cruz looked at her. "This is psychological warfare." "I know," Vanessa said. "And I'm going to flip it on them." The next morning, Vanessa sat in front of a camera crew. The press was told it was a public statement on domestic terrorism. Every major network tuned in. The room was packed. At 10 a.m. sharp, she began to speak. But not the way they expected. "I was told to lie today," she said, voice clear, gaze steel. "To deny what this country saw with its own eyes. To protect the legacy of a corrupt officer and a violent system." She paused, took a breath. "But I won't lie. I won't protect monsters. And I won't let these cowards hide in the dark." Gasps echoed. Reporters scribbled furiously. Vanessa leaned in. "You kidnapped my daughter. And I'm telling the whole world now. I'm coming for you." She stood and walked away as cameras flashed behind her. Back in the hideout, Layla smiled. Paladin stood frozen. "She just declared war," he muttered. Layla turned her head toward the camera. "Oops," she said. "Guess she really is the storm." And then, boom, the wall next to the hideout exploded inward. Smoke and flashbangs flooded the room. Vanessa had tracked them. She didn't wait for orders. She didn't wait for permission. She came with everything. Marshals stormed the building. Gunfire erupted. And in the chaos, Paladin vanished. But Layla was found. Safe. Shaking. But alive. She ran into Vanessa's arms, sobbing. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. "I always will," Vanessa said. But as the dust settled and the medics swarmed, one thing became clear. Paladin had slipped through the cracks. Again. And this time, he had a name. A real one. Left on a file in the hideout, circled in red. Nathaniel Burke, retired Special Forces. Disavowed. Last seen, D.C. And scribbled in pen beneath it. Target, Vanessa Cole. Final judgment coming. The name echoed in Vanessa's head like a warning bell. Nathaniel Burke. She repeated it over and over, memorizing every letter, every syllable, like a vow. This wasn't just about justice anymore. This was personal. Burke wasn't hiding in the shadows anymore. He was stepping forward, daring her to chase him. And she would. She'd burned too much, lost too much, bled too much to stop now. The intel team worked through the night. Jennings paced in front of a giant digital map covered in blinking red dots, possible Burke sightings across the country. Cruz tapped her keyboard rapidly. Burke went off the grid 5 years ago. Before that, he was one of the best in special forces, survivalist, infiltration expert, top of his class. Then suddenly, he's dishonorably discharged after a classified op overseas. Files are sealed tighter than Fort Knox. David stepped in from the hallway. "We just intercepted chatter on a darknet forum. He's planning something big. He's calling it Judgment Day." Vanessa stared at the board, her voice like stone. "Then we end this before that day comes." She turned to Cruz. "I need every detail. Every connection. Family, friends, handlers, former team members. We find the pattern." Cruz hesitated. "There's one name that keeps popping up in Burke's history, a former military psychologist named Dr. Adrian Teller. She signed off on his final evaluation. Then she disappeared." "Disappeared?" David asked. "Moved off the grid. Changed names. No social media. But I think I found her. Lives under the name in Sullivan now, upstate New York. Owns a bookstore in a town with a population of 200. Vanessa grabbed her coat. "I'm going." The drive upstate was long, winding, and heavy with silence. David went with her. Layla stayed back, under 24/7 protection. Vanessa hadn't told her they were chasing the man who planned her abduction. She wouldn't until he was caught, or dead. As the car moved deeper into the forest, Vanessa whispered, "You think Burke was born like this?" David shook his head. "No. Nobody's born with that kind of hate. It's taught. Then it's weaponized." Vanessa nodded slowly. "Then let's unmake the weapon." They found the bookstore on a quiet street. No signs, no customers. Just an old wooden door with a bell that jingled softly when they walked in. A woman with gray hair and kind eyes looked up from behind the counter. Vanessa stepped forward. Dr. Adrian Teller? The woman didn't flinch. She took off her glasses. I knew someone would come eventually, but I thought it would be him. Vanessa sat across from her at a small wooden table. Tell me about Burke. Teller took a long breath. He was brilliant. Charming, but damaged. There was a darkness in him. After the mission in Syria, something snapped. He stopped sleeping, kept talking about justice, his version of it. Said the system was rotten, that the only way to fix it was to cut out the infection. David asked, did you report him? I tried, but his COs buried the file. He was a decorated soldier. They didn't want the scandal, so they let him walk. Vanessa clenched her fists. And now he's walking through our cities, threatening judges, kidnapping kids. Teller leaned in. He's building something. You understand? Not just a group. A movement. He believes he's a savior. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Where would he go next? Teller hesitated, then walked to a dusty shelf. She pulled down an old military journal. Inside was a torn photo of Burke standing in front of an old church. Burned-out windows, surrounded by men in black tactical gear. Where is this? Vanessa asked. Virginia, Teller said. It's a church he bought under a fake name. That's where he trains them. That's where he becomes the Messiah they think he is. Vanessa stood. Then that's where we end it. Back at headquarters, Jennings received the location and launched an immediate recon op. Drones confirmed suspicious movement around the old church. Armed men coming and going. Trucks arriving in the middle of the night. Crews pulled up blueprints. It's fortified. They've got underground access tunnels, watchtowers, and satellite blockers. If we go in blind, we're not coming out. Vanessa tapped the screen. Then we don't go in blind. The next night, Vanessa, Jennings, Cruz, and a full federal tactical team gathered outside the compound. Rain fell in sheets. Thunder cracked the sky. The mission was simple. Infiltrate. Capture Burke. Collapse the operation from the inside. Vanessa insisted on going in. This started with me. It ends with me. Jennings grunted. You're a federal judge. I'm also a mother. And he threatened my child. They all knew she wasn't asking. Inside the compound, Burke stood in the pulpit of the charred church. Around him were 20 of his followers, armed and loyal. He raised a hand. Tonight, he said, we finish what they started. We burn down the system that tried to bury us. And we show the world that justice belongs to those who seize it. The crowd cheered. Then, the power cut. Darkness. And over the PA system, a voice echoed. Nathaniel Burke. This is Judge Vanessa Cole. You're surrounded. There's no escape. Surrender now, and no one has to die. Burke's jaw clenched. He turned toward the window. Flashlights glimmered in the trees. They found us, one of his men whispered. Burke smiled. Good. He reached under the altar and pulled out a switch. We take as many of them with us as we can. Outside, the agents moved fast. Jennings took the east wing. Cruz and David pushed through the rear tunnels. Vanessa entered through the front. Alone, weapon drawn, heart steady. Inside the sanctuary, Burke stood like a preacher of doom, arms outstretched. Judge Cole, he said. I knew you'd come. This is over, she said, voice like fire. He stepped down slowly, switch still in hand. You're too late. I already won. No, she said. You lost the moment you took an innocent girl to prove a lie. Burke lunged toward the detonator. Vanessa fired. Crack. The bullet hit his shoulder. He dropped the switch and fell back, blood blooming across his coat. Agents stormed the room, screaming, clear. Jennings secured the detonator. David cuffed Burke, who lay on the floor, gasping, eyes blazing. You don't understand, he growled. There will be others. Vanessa leaned down. Then tell them, she said. Tell them justice isn't afraid anymore. 3 days later, the compound was dismantled. Weapons seized. Documents recovered. Over 40 people arrested. And Nathaniel Burke? He was locked away. No trial yet. No deals. But the country watched. And remembered. On a bright spring morning, Vanessa stood on the steps of the courthouse once more. The same place Briggs once stood. The same courthouse where it all began. This time, she wasn't alone. Layla stood beside her. David, too. And behind them, Jennings, Cruz, and dozens of citizens who had marched, testified, and fought for justice along the way. She spoke into the microphone. We faced fear. We faced hate. But we didn't run. And in the end, we proved that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to be silent. The crowd erupted. And for the first time in a long time, America listened. But far away, in a dark room lit only by a single laptop screen, a shadowy figure watched the press conference replay. They clicked pause when Vanessa's face appeared. And on the wall beside them, a new list, a new mission. At the top, written in red ink, Vanessa Cole. The storm wasn't over. But Vanessa? She was ready. 2 weeks passed. Nathaniel Burke was in federal custody, isolated, no visitors, no phone calls. His network was collapsing. Dozens of members were indicted. Some flipped, cutting deals to save themselves. Others disappeared into the wind, leaving behind only digital footprints and coded messages. But Vanessa Cole didn't rest. She couldn't, because she knew this war wasn't over. And she was right. It started again with something small. A break-in at the courthouse. No files stolen, just a single phrase spray-painted on her courtroom wall. The gavel will fall for you. Security was doubled. Marshals moved Vanessa and her family to a new location. Again, then came the email, sent to the inbox of every federal judge in her district. It was a photo. Vanessa at the grocery store just 2 days earlier. The message attached read, "We still see you." David wanted to take her and Layla out of the city entirely. But Vanessa refused. "This is where I work. This is where I fight. If I run, they win." Cruz leaned over the conference table. "Then we find out who's still out there." They pored over the files taken from Burke's compound. Tucked deep in an encrypted folder labeled Requiem was a list. It wasn't names this time. It was a schedule. 12 cities. 12 dates. Each labeled with a code name. Only one had passed. Atlanta, Harbinger. The next? Judicator, Washington, D.C., April 27th. 6 days away. Vanessa looked at the date, then at the wall of the conference room. A framed photo of Judge Roberta Hayes, the same judge who stood with Vanessa during the trial's aftermath. "She's next," Vanessa whispered. "They're going after the judges on that list, one by one." In Washington, D.C., Judge Hayes had no idea her life was already on a countdown. She'd just finished reading a decision in her chambers when her assistant knocked. "There's a man here to see you. Says he's from Homeland Security. No appointment." Hayes frowned. "Name?" "He says it's urgent." "Agent Dale Rowan." She didn't recognize it, but she waved him in. The man who entered looked official enough. Badge. Short-cropped hair. Confident smile. But what she didn't see was the micro-device on the back of his belt. A transmitter. He sat, pulled out a folder. "I won't take much of your time, Judge," he said. "We've received intelligence of a potential threat targeting federal judges. We're sweeping the entire circuit." She glanced at the folder. It looked legitimate. "Do you have clearance to share specifics?" "Oh yes," he smiled. And he pressed something under the table. Back in Atlanta, Cruz froze as her screen flashed. "Motion alert. Rowan Dale. Search query just triggered from D.C. courthouse." But that's not a real agent. That badge ID belongs to a dead man. Jennings leaned forward. "They're moving." Vanessa grabbed her coat. "We need to warn her. Now." David stopped her. "Let me go." "No," she said. "They'll expect you. They don't expect me to walk into fire again." She turned to Cruz. "Get me on a jet. I'll brief the U.S. Marshals when I land." Then she turned to David. Her voice softened. "Stay with Layla. If I don't come back." He touched her arm. "Don't say that. You will come back." For hours later, Vanessa arrived in D.C. Rain tapped lightly against her coat as she marched into the courthouse with 2 armed federal agents. But when they reached Judge Hayes' chambers, she was gone. The assistant was unconscious on the floor. The room was empty. On the desk, a single object sat in plain view. A chess piece. The queen. And next to it, a phone playing an audio loop. Hayes' voice, muffled and distressed. Then Burke's voice. "You didn't stop anything, Vanessa. You just woke up the real ones." Cruz contacted Vanessa immediately. "We scanned the encrypted Requiem folder again," she said. "There's something else hidden in the metadata. An acronym, THEM." Vanessa's heart thudded. What does it stand for? We're still decoding. But something else came up. A name. It's buried in message headers and file signatures. Cruz zoomed in on her screen and highlighted it. Project Paladin, successor designate, A. Maddox. Vanessa froze. Another Maddox? No, Cruz said. Amelia Maddox. niece to Deputy Chief Maddox. Cybersecurity expert. No criminal record. But she dropped out of MIT 3 years ago and disappeared. Vanessa stepped back. She's the architect. She's the one who picked up where Burke left off. And now she had Judge Hayes. Meanwhile, deep in an underground facility outside Richmond, Virginia, Judge Roberta Hayes sat cuffed to a chair, weak but alive. In front of her stood a young woman with dark eyes and a piercing calmness. Amelia Maddox. She tapped a tablet screen as code flowed behind her. "This isn't about you," she said to Hayes. "It's about symbols. When we take down people like you, it sends a message." Hayes stared at her. "Your uncle was a coward. What are you?" Amelia tilted her head. "I'm Evolution." Back in D.C., Vanessa launched a full-scale manhunt with the FBI. Using facial recognition, they tracked Amelia to a parking garage 2 nights ago. The license plate led to a shell company, owned by a former Paladin associate. Vanessa stared at the footage. "Tell me she slipped. Tell me she left something behind." Cruz smiled slightly. "Oh, she did. A traffic cam caught her glancing up at a drone. Not ours. One of theirs. They're using their own surveillance network. And we can follow it." Vanessa asked. Cruz nodded. "We already are." The trail led to an abandoned technology lab near a military decommission site in Virginia. Federal forces moved quickly, quietly, surrounding the facility. Vanessa geared up. Again, Jennings looked at her. "This is getting dangerous even for you." She clipped a bulletproof vest. Justice doesn't work on half measures. Inside the facility, Amelia Maddox prepared a live broadcast. Judge Hayes would be executed publicly. A symbol. An erasure of hope. Vanessa entered with the strike team just as Amelia counted down on her stream. 3-2. Crash. Flashbangs erupted. Gunfire. Screams. Vanessa rushed through the chaos, kicking open the door to a small studio room, and found Judge Hayes. Alive. Barely conscious. But breathing. She uncuffed her. "I've got you." Behind them, Amelia tried to run. But Cruz tackled her first. "You should have stayed in school," she growled. Amelia snarled. "You can stop me. But THEM is bigger than one person." Vanessa appeared behind her. "Maybe. But I only need to stop you." Amelia was taken into custody. Judge Hayes recovered. And the date labeled Judicator? Neutralized. Back in Atlanta, Vanessa held Layla close that night. "You're safe now," she whispered. Layla looked up at her. "Are you safe?" Vanessa hesitated, then lied gently. "Yes." But in her pocket, her phone buzzed again. A message from Cruz. Decoded the acronym. THEM equals Targeted Heuristic Erasure Model. It's a blueprint, Vanessa, for eliminating justice officials across all 50 states. There are more names, including yours. Vanessa sat back, heart thundering. And just like that, Chapter 3 of the war had begun. The cold words stared back at Vanessa from her phone. THEM equals Targeted Heuristic Erasure Model. She read the message over and over until every letter burned into her brain. THEM wasn't just a group. It wasn't just an ideology. It was a systematic plan, one designed to eliminate every judge, attorney, and lawmaker who stood in the way of their warped idea of restoring order. And she was near the top of that list. Not because of who she was, but because she refused to back down. At dawn, Vanessa called an emergency meeting. The FBI, Homeland Security, DOJ, all on the line. In the dim-lit war room, Cruz stepped up to the screen. Her voice was tight. "We've decrypted enough of Amelia Maddox's data to map Phase 3 of the THEM campaign. It's bad." She tapped a key. A U.S. map appeared, cities blinking red. Phase 1 was Atlanta, Briggs. Phase 2 was D.C., Burke and Judge Hayes. But Phase 3? It's a simultaneous assault. The map zoomed in. 5 cities. 5 names. All high-profile public servants. Judges, prosecutors, senators. All black. And all scheduled to speak at a National Criminal Justice Reform Summit in Chicago, just 48 hours from now. Vanessa's stomach dropped. They're going to attack the summit. Cruz nodded grimly. It's a perfect storm. Press, government, live coverage. They want a spectacle. A massacre disguised as a message. Jennings spoke up. "We need to cancel the summit." Vanessa shook her head. "That's exactly what they want. To silence the movement before it speaks." David looked at her, eyes wide. "You're not actually thinking of going?" She stared out the window, then back at them. "I'm not just going," she said. "I'm going to take the stage." The media exploded with speculation when word leaked that Judge Cole would be delivering the opening speech in Chicago. Some said she was reckless. Others called her a hero. But only a handful knew the truth. The summit was now a federal trap. Dozens of undercover agents were stationed throughout the venue. Drones scanned rooftops. Snipers were positioned at every entry. Bomb-sniffing dogs swept the building twice an hour. But despite all the protection, everyone knew it wouldn't be enough. Because THM didn't send amateurs. They sent ghosts. The night before the summit, Vanessa sat alone in her hotel suite. Layla had begged her not to go. "Mom, if something happens to you, what happens to me?" Vanessa held her daughter's face. "Then you become me." Layla blinked through tears. "I don't want to be strong if it means losing you." Vanessa kissed her forehead. "You won't lose me. I promise." But as she closed the door and turned toward the window, the truth crept in. She couldn't promise that. In a safe house across the city, Amelia Maddox sat handcuffed to a steel table. Cruz walked in and dropped a thick file in front of her. "We have your entire playbook." Amelia barely glanced up. "Then you know how many people are ready to die for it." Cruz leaned close. "We also know about the warden." That got her attention. Amelia's face twitched. "He won't let you stop it." "Who is he?" She smiled faintly. "The final architect. Burke was the hammer. I was the code. He is the soul." "Where is he?" Amelia leaned back, eyes half-lidded. "If I told you that, he'd kill me before you could say thank you." At the summit, the atmosphere was electric. Cameras lined the walls. Thousands gathered. Protesters stood outside with signs both for and against reform. Security scanned every shadow. Then, Vanessa stepped onto the stage. The crowd rose in applause. But in the highest balcony, a figure adjusted a scope. In the basement, another man armed a pressure-triggered bomb beneath the center row. And in the crowd, a woman with a press badge slowly reached into her coat. Cruz's voice crackled in Vanessa's earpiece. Multiple threats converging. "Stand by." Vanessa took the podium, heart hammering. "My name is Judge Vanessa Cole," she began, "and I stand here today because they tried to silence me." Her voice rang out clear. "They came for my dignity, my child, my life, and I am still here." Jennings spoke in Cruz's earpiece. "We've got movement. Red vest, third row left." Cruz's voice was calm. "2 suspects confirmed. Do we have a go?" But before orders were given, the power went out. Total blackout. Gasps echoed. Panic stirred. Vanessa stood still, refusing to move. Her voice cut through the dark. "This is how they do it. Fear. Silence. Darkness. But let me remind you." A spotlight flickered on. It hit Vanessa perfectly. "They do not own the light." Crack. A gunshot rang out. But it didn't come from inside. It came from the rooftop. A sniper. Vanessa dropped behind the podium. Screams erupted. Cruz's voice barked orders. "Go, go, go." Federal teams swarmed in. Red lasers lit the air. The bomb was spotted, secured just seconds before activation. One attacker in the crowd raised a gun, but was tackled by a plainclothes agent before they could fire. Another tried to flee through the back, but was stopped cold by Jennings and a security team. And on the rooftop, David tackled the sniper to the ground, ripping the weapon away. One by one, THM's soldiers were caught, and one by one they fell. The lights came back on. Vanessa stood, dusted herself off, and returned to the mic. People were still standing, afraid, breathing hard, but standing. And she said, "They tried to make this a funeral. Let's make it a beginning." The room exploded in applause. Later that night, as Cruz interrogated the last captured assailant, something odd happened. The man smiled. "You think you stopped the plan," he said. "But this was just the noise." Cruz narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" He leaned forward, voice dark. "The real target is still walking free." Back in Atlanta, Layla opened her laptop, checking messages from classmates. Then she saw it. A strange video, unlisted, anonymous. Titled, "The Truth About Judge Cole." Her breath caught in her chest. She hit play, and on the screen was Vanessa. But not now. It was old footage. Secret recordings. Her private conversations. Spliced. Twisted. Manipulated. Edited to make her sound corrupt. Biased. Dangerous. Then a deep voice boomed. "She thinks she's the hero. But every empire falls. The warden is coming." Layla's hand trembled. She picked up her phone. "Mom," she said, voice shaking. "They're turning people against you. They made something. You need to see this. And outside her window, a black car parked across the street. Engine running. No driver in sight. The next chapter had begun. Vanessa watched the video in silence. Each second felt like a dagger twisting in her gut. Her voice, chopped and spliced, was used to tell lies so convincing they almost fooled her. The footage showed her saying things she never said, calling juries a formality, claiming real justice belongs to those who take it. They'd taken public courtroom footage, private voice recordings from old voicemails, maybe even tapped devices from the Maddox operation. But what haunted her most was what came at the end. The screen faded to black, and then a new voice came, smooth, rich, commanding. I am the warden, and I see you, Judge Cole, not because of what you've done, but because of what you've become. Then, your trial is next. Click. End of video. Vanessa's jaw tightened. She turned to Cruz, who had watched the whole thing from across the table, face pale. This isn't propaganda, Cruz said softly. It's psychological warfare. They're seeding doubt before the next strike. David stepped forward, tossing a tablet onto the table. It's already spreading. Reddit threads, Twitter, Telegram groups. They're reposting it on far-right channels with the tag #JusticeIsCorrupt. Layla stood in the doorway. Her voice was small, but clear. People at school are already talking about it. Vanessa looked up, heart sinking. What are they saying? Layla hesitated. Some say it's fake. Others say you've been playing both sides all along. Vanessa swallowed hard. She turned to Cruz. I need to speak. Publicly. On every channel that'll have me. Cruz shook her head. That's what they want. You step out there, and you're taking the bait. I don't care, Vanessa said. They've used my voice to lie. I have to use it to tell the truth. That night, every major outlet tuned in. CNN, MSNBC, even conservative networks broadcasted it live. Judge Cole, sitting in front of the same podium where she had once been nearly assassinated, stared directly into the camera. They tried to steal my voice, she said. So I'm taking it back. She laid it out plain. The lies. The doctored video. The truth about Briggs, Maddox, and Burke. The existence of THEM and the warden. And finally, she lifted a thick folder in her hand. These are sealed documents proving that certain high-ranking individuals, some still serving, have quietly supported this terrorist movement. Gasps rang out in the press room. I will not release them yet, she said. Because if I do, it will ignite panic. But know this, we know who you are. She closed the folder. And if you come for me again, I promise you, this time, I won't just survive. I'll burn your entire house down with the truth. The next morning, a member of the media leaked something that wasn't supposed to go public. A photo, not of Vanessa, but of a man in a black suit walking into a federal courthouse in Alabama. His name, Marshall Dean Avery, a respected appeals court judge. Publicly impartial. Privately something else. The file said he had been under silent investigation for 2 years. What no one knew. He was one of the earliest funders of Burke's original operation. Now it was out. The country exploded. Half the nation demanded resignations. The other half screamed it was a witch hunt. Vanessa hadn't even released her files yet, but someone inside her circle had. A breach. Or a warning shot. And then came the envelope. Hand-delivered. No stamp. Inside was a single phrase. Next time, it's Layla. David insisted on sending Layla to a private security compound in Colorado. Underground. Sealed. Impenetrable. Vanessa refused. I need her close. She's not a symbol, V. She's our daughter. She's my reason. But she could see it in his eyes. The fear. The dread. He was starting to break. And Vanessa was right behind him. That night, Layla sat on her bed, watching the moon glow through the blinds. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through the video again, the doctored one. She paused it at a specific point. Zoomed in. There. A reflection. In the glass behind Vanessa's image, a face. Not Vanessa's. Not someone in the room that day. Someone else. She enhanced it using software her mom had taught her to use. Then compared it to the surveillance footage from Burke's compound. It was the same man. Whoever doctored the footage was in the room when Burke recorded his messages. Layla's eyes widened. She ran to Vanessa's office. Mom, I found him. Back at headquarters, Cruz had already started scanning video overlays. The facial match Layla found wasn't just anyone. It was a man named Gregory Soren, a former NSA asset turned rogue analyst. Disappeared 4 years ago, rumored to be the warden's voice. Cruz pulled up every piece of data. Old IDs, training logs, voice samples, and then, boom, a location ping. Not from Soren. From a dark web server he once used. Chicago. Again. But not in the city. In the outskirts. Near an old mental hospital abandoned since the 80s. The summit had been a distraction. The real operation had been running underneath it the entire time. And now, Soren, the warden, was inside that facility, building the final phase. Vanessa stared at the image on the screen. I'm going, she said. David stepped forward. No. We're going. Cruz looked between them. You'll need a team. Vanessa nodded. I don't want a team. They all froze. I want every judge still on that list. The next day, under the protection of Homeland Security, 5 judges boarded a private jet. All black. All targeted. All survivors. Judge Hayes. Judge Steele. Judge Harmon. Judge Ward. And Vanessa Cole. They landed 2 miles from the facility. And under a stormy gray sky, surrounded by agents, they walked toward the building that had once been used to break minds. Now, they were there to break a system. Inside the abandoned mental hospital, every step echoed. They found rooms filled with propaganda, recordings, maps, blueprints for chaos. They pushed deeper, until they reached the heart, a large chamber wired like a command center. And there, seated calmly at a desk full of monitors, Gregory Soren, the warden. He didn't run. He simply looked up. Judge Cole, he said, smiling faintly. Welcome to the trial. Vanessa stepped forward. You're under arrest. Soren leaned back, calm as still water. You think putting me in a cage stops this? You don't understand. This isn't a group. It's a belief. And beliefs don't bleed. Judge Harmon stepped forward. No, she said. But they rot. And with that, Jennings entered, gun drawn. Soren stood slowly. You may think you've won. And then he whispered. But justice doesn't end with you. It ends with silence. He raised something. A small device. Click. Boom. The entire facility shook. Explosions from the East Wing. Smoke. Screams. Sirens. The judges were pulled out by agents as fire burst from the walls. Vanessa turned in time to see Soren vanish into the flames. Was it real? Was it a diversion? His body was never found. Back home, weeks passed. The chaos slowed. The propaganda campaign collapsed. The warden's plan was dismantled. But Vanessa Cole would never be the same. She stood on the steps of the courthouse once more, holding her daughter's hand, facing a crowd of thousands. They tried to erase us, she said. They failed. Cheers erupted. And in that moment, a black girl named Layla Cole smiled from the front row. Because despite everything, her mother had made the world safer. Not just for her, but for everyone like her. And somewhere, in a quiet room, deep underground, a camera blinked to life, and a voice whispered, appeal in progress. But for now, justice had the final word. The room was filled with light, sunlight pouring through windows, not fire or fear or emergency lights for once. It had been 6 months since the attack on the mental hospital. 6 months since the warden, Gregory Soren, disappeared into the flames. No body was ever found. No signal, no ping, no movement. To the world, he was dead. To Vanessa, he was waiting. She knew ghosts like him didn't just disappear. They watched. They studied. They waited for cracks. Still, in those 6 months, life had started to return. Layla was thriving again. Her smile was less guarded now. She joined the debate team. She walked the halls of her school not as the judge's daughter, but as Layla, in her own power. Vanessa returned to the bench. Not full-time yet, but she held hearings again. She sat behind that same bench they once tried to destroy her on. And she didn't flinch, because no one was going to make her afraid of her own courtroom. But in the middle of that peace came one last ripple. It started with a letter. No return address. No markings. But inside was a simple USB drive. She plugged it into an isolated laptop inside a secure room. Jennings stood beside her. Cruz monitored firewalls. The screen flickered. Then a black background. White text. You silenced the storm, but you didn't drain the flood. Then, a live video feed. It showed a man in a prison cell. Small. Concrete. Plain. But not Soren. It was someone else. His face beaten. Hands trembling. He whispered something. And Cruz turned up the volume. They said there's a new list. The screen glitched. Then cut to static. Vanessa leaned forward, jaw tight. Who was that? Cruz tapped on her keyboard, trying to recover metadata. Running a match now. Jennings pointed. Rewind. Freeze there. They zoomed in on a reflection in the wall behind the prisoner. And Vanessa's heart dropped. It was a name tag. Z. Carter, Warden, Sector 7 Federal Detention Unit. Vanessa stood slowly. I know that place. It's the Ghost Prison. Ghost? Cruz asked. It's off books. A place where they put the dangerous and the inconvenient. No oversight. No records. Only a few people even admit it exists. Jennings muttered. And someone's running a live feed out of it. Vanessa said the words slowly, like unraveling a secret. Soren's not dead. Cruz looked at her. Then what is he? Vanessa turned to the screen, where static danced like a storm cloud waiting to break. He's evolving. The next morning, a package was delivered to Vanessa's home. Inside was a book. No letter. No threats. Just a single copy of the Federalist Papers. But when she flipped through the pages, a section had been carved out. Inside was a small, handwritten note. One more trial. One final judgment. The Court of Shadows is in session. Her breath caught in her chest. Layla walked in. Mom, she asked. Vanessa tucked the note into her pocket. It's nothing. But she knew better. The book. The prison feed. The message. This wasn't just one last threat. It was the final chapter. Vanessa, Cruz, and Jennings dug deeper. Every buried file on the ghost prison was pulled. Code names. Off-the-books projects. Facilities run under shell corporations tied to former military intelligence. And then, a match. The prison, Sector 7, was operated under something called Project Echelon, a former intelligence program designed to create judicial resets. Targeting systems, not people, until people became the system. And someone took the program into their own hands. David sat with Layla in the kitchen while Vanessa stared at the classified files. You don't have to go, he said gently. Vanessa didn't answer. You've done enough. You saved us. You changed things. I didn't finish it, she replied. You don't owe anyone that. Vanessa looked up, eyes filled with a fire that never fully dimmed. I owe Layla that. The next morning, Vanessa stood on a tarmac beside a federal jet. The words, classified, Operation Final Gavel, were printed on the mission briefing. Cruz approached her with a final warning. This isn't just a prison. It's a courtroom, run by shadows. Judges that never existed on paper. Witnesses who vanish. And trials designed to rewrite history. Vanessa pulled her badge from her coat pocket. They've put me on trial this whole time, she said. It's time I put them on mine. She turned to Jennings. You coming? He smirked. Wouldn't miss it. As the plane took off, a storm rolled in. Thunder cracked. Rain splashed across the windows. Vanessa closed her eyes, holding her daughter's name in her heart like a shield. Because wherever this final trial led, whatever the Court of Shadows had planned, she would meet it with one truth. She never needed permission to deliver justice. Only the courage to stand. Far away, inside Sector 7, a man sat at a stone table. Black suit. White gloves. Head lowered. A chessboard sat in front of him. The pieces were all black. Only one white queen remained. He moved a pawn forward and whispered, Let the verdict begin. The flight to Sector 7 felt like a descent into myth. The kind of story people whispered about in deep corners of power. Unofficial prisons, untraceable facilities, where rules didn't matter and truth was just another variable to control. As the jet sliced through the storm, Vanessa stared out the window. Her breath fogged the glass. Layla's face was in her mind, vivid and unshakable. She wasn't going into darkness alone. She carried her daughter's courage with her. Next to her sat Cruz, locked in and calm. Jennings was loading his sidearm. No team. No press. No safety net. Just them. Just the end. Sector 7 wasn't marked on any map. The jet landed on a strip surrounded by dead trees and silence. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still the color of bruised steel. As they exited the plane, a blast of cold wind met them. And then silence. Until a tall figure stepped out of the mist. Gray suit. Narrow glasses. A badge with no name. I'm here to escort you, he said. The tribunal is in session. Vanessa's lips tightened. Lead the way. They entered through a stone arch, descending underground into what looked more like a mausoleum than a courtroom. Long, echoing halls. No signs. No color. No justice. They passed cells with no names. People with blank stares. Echoes of murmured prayers and whispers. And then they reached the courtroom. It was a cavernous space made of concrete and cold steel, with one long table in the center. No jury, no gallery, just a raised platform where three figures sat behind iron masks. The middle one spoke, voice distorted and low. "Vanessa Cole, you have been summoned." Vanessa stood tall. Summoned by whom? By the Court of Shadows. For crimes against the balance. Jennings leaned into Cruz. "This is a cult, not a court." But Vanessa didn't flinch. "What balance did I threaten?" she asked. The masked figure replied. "You believe justice belongs to the people. You were wrong. It belongs to power." Vanessa took a step forward. "Then let me speak for the people." They didn't interrupt her. Maybe because they thought they'd already won. Maybe because they wanted to see her break. But she didn't. Vanessa raised her voice. "You tried to erase me. My name. My family. You weaponized lies and fear. But here I stand." She stepped closer. "You kidnapped my child." Another step. "You tried to kill my colleagues." Another. "You manipulated truth like it was currency, and you thought I wouldn't find you." She now stood directly beneath the masked judges. "But the thing you never understood is this. The system didn't give me my power. I earned it. I fought for it. And you can't silence what was never yours to silence." The chamber was dead silent. Then the mask in the center tilted slightly. "You speak like one who believes victory is near." Vanessa's eyes burned. "I know it is." A sudden pulse of electricity surged through the room. Screens lit up across the chamber, one by one. Faces appeared. Live feeds. Judge Hayes. Ward. Harmon. Steele. Layla. Every person they'd tried to destroy was watching. Because while Vanessa faced the court, Cruz had been broadcasting every second of the hearing back to a secure FBI satellite. Jennings had rerouted the signal. They flipped the script, turned a secret trial into a global stage. The Court of Shadows wasn't judging Vanessa anymore. The world was judging them. The masked figure rose to speak, but before he could, the far wall blew open. Boom. SWAT teams flooded the chamber. Agents in black riot gear moved like thunder, shouting, weapons raised. Federal officers. "Drop everything." One by one, the masked judges were pulled from their seats, screaming behind distorted voices. Cruz grabbed Vanessa's arm. "It's over. We got them." Vanessa didn't smile. She just nodded once. It was done. Back above ground, Vanessa breathed in fresh air for the first time in what felt like forever. The sun broke through the clouds. David was there, arms open. Layla too, running toward her. They collided in a hug so fierce it nearly knocked her over. Layla sobbed. "You said you'd come back." Vanessa kissed her forehead. "I keep my promises." 1 month later, Vanessa stood behind the bench once more. The courtroom was packed, not because of a trial, but because of a ceremony. The president had flown in. Media swarmed the courthouse steps. Judge Vanessa Cole was being honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But when it was her turn to speak, she didn't talk about herself. She talked about them. The people who stood with her. Who didn't flinch when the system cracked. Who held the line. She pointed to Layla. "My daughter once asked me what happens when justice gets pushed too far. I told her it bends. But it does not break. Not if we stand in its way." She held up the medal. "This doesn't belong to me. It belongs to everyone who refused to go silent." The crowd stood, cheering. And in that moment, Vanessa smiled fully. No fear. No weight. Just peace. That night, she tucked Layla in. No bomb threats. No anonymous calls. Just soft jazz from the kitchen and the scent of apple tea. Layla looked up at her and whispered, "Is it really over?" Vanessa kissed her cheek. "It's just beginning. But we've already won the most important part." "What's that?" She smiled. "We're still here. Far away. In a bunker sealed shut by federal agents." A single flicker of a screen buzzed. A corrupted voice echoed. "Backup initialized. New architect required." Then silence. Then, deleted.